This is Jason from Fix My Books. Another tax comparison this week, and we're looking at Canada versus the US. And before we were looking at specifically Ontario and Florida, but now we're going to look at just broadly Canada versus the US. Part 5, high income probability. So what is your probability of owning a certain income? So part 1, we compared the different tax brackets in the two jurisdictions, so Canada, US, Florida, and Ontario. Part 2, we looked at the actual taxes you'd pay on $100,000 worth of US income and the Canadian equivalent amount, so $140,000 based on the exchange rate at the time. This is not great. Part 3, we factored in the cost of healthcare because you do have to pay for that separately in the US, whereas in Canada it's included in your provincial taxes. Part 4, we looked at factoring in housing and expenses, and we saw that one place you get kind of a floor in terms of what you got to pay, and in the US you get quite a large range. So that's a good one to watch if you're thinking of moving to these places and how much money you could potentially save by changing some of these variables, such as housing particular. And part 5, today we're going to look at the high income probabilities. So what is your probability to earn this type of income? And you're going to be shocked. So 140,000 CAD versus USD 100K. Sounds nice, but what is the reality that you're going to earn this based on the income statistics? So these are the individual income statistics from different tax brackets in 2024, or the 2024 edition. For this is the tax year 2022. All right, and I've got everything here that I've just plugged into Excel, just copy and pasted it, and we've got the different income brackets that Canada sort of divides it into, which is around 50,000, 50,000 or 100,000, 100,000 or 155,000, 155,000 or 221,000, 221,000 plus, then all brackets, and it also includes non-residents. So I've minused out the non-residents here to get this number of total people that have filed a tax return. Now, we have to do some manipulation on this data just so that it sort of equates between the two, and you're going to see, I'm going to walk you through that now. So, and total population, I think I just took this from the Canadian website, 41,887,635. But this includes people under the age of 18. So what we're going to do is remove the children, so any under 18-year-old from the total population. And so I've had to grab this other data. This is, I think, from population.un.org, and that's 7.2 to 7.3 million people under 18 in Canada. And so I've removed that, and we're left with the total population minus these under 18 people. So it's 34,595 roughly. And, or 34,595,000. So why did I do this? So that we can get all the 18 plus people that are not filing a tax return. Right? So we had all these people before, the 50,000 less, blah, 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 up to 221,000 plus. And that was all filers that they had. So we go back here, 30 million and 17,000, 30 million, 17,000. And then we wanted all potential filers. So these are people that they haven't filed a tax return for whatever reason, they're delinquent, but they're 18 years and over, and they really do have the potential to earn income, right? It's quite easy for them because they can just have a job. Or there's something else going on, they may be injured, but they can earn income. There are numerous ways to earn income. You don't even have to move these days, and you can earn income. And so I've included those people in no filing. And they're about 4 million, so it's the difference between these two numbers here. And so this is going to be quite shocking to people, because I know some people that earn $100,000 in Canada, and they don't think that they earn that much money, or they earn over $100,000 and they don't think they earn that much money. But if you're looking at a probability basis, so what we've got here is the tax brackets, and I've combined the 18 plus no filing because they're obviously $50,000 or less. Usually there'd be this. I mean, there are probably some bad people that are earning millions and not filing, but they're few and far between, as we can see here. So they're majoritively going to be in this bracket here, and so that's combined into 23 million, nearly 400,000 people. So it's 67% of the population that we're dealing with here. 67.64%, and they're earning $50,000 or less, roughly. And then when we get from 50,000 or 100,000 Canadian dollars, that's about 8 million people in the country, about 23% of the population of filers, 23.5%. Now, when you get to this area here, so this is what we're really looking at, like the 140,000 people plus, because this is 155, right? And you got to look at it in terms of the skew. So 155 plus, that's 3.1% of the population in Canada that has the potential to file 18 plus, right? Now, if you look at the skew and you're kind of figuring in, well, 140 is very close to 155 relative to 100. Let's give it an extra 2% on top of that. So you're really looking at the top 5% of the country earning 140,000 Canadian dollars or more. The top 5%. That's 100,000 US dollars, by the way. So the top 5% of the country are earning 140,000 Canadian dollars or more. So it kind of like reverse exponential here. But this is what it looks like graphically. Like these are the people. You think there's a lot of these people in Canada. There really isn't. There is a very, very small percentage of people. So we're really looking at just like 8.8% of people in Canada earning over 100,000 Canadian dollars. Now let's compare this to the US and follow the same example. So we've got the individual tax statistics by adjusted gross income in the States for 2022. And we've got all the returns here from all the different income types or income brackets. Then we've got people that have no filing, which is the difference between the actual population of the US and didn't file any tax return at all. And then we need the 18 and over again, so we need the US population of 17 and under, which is 74,600,000, and we minus that, these two numbers, to get that and that minus, and so we get this. We get 101 million and a half of people over 18 that don't file a tax return. So the reason why so many people don't actually file a tax return in the US is not because they're being delinquent or anything, but obviously there are people that do that. It's because in the US, not everyone has to file a tax return, because this only occurs if your income is under a certain threshold. So if your income ranges from like 14,000 to 30,000, you usually won't have to file a tax return. You won't have a filing requirement. You may have different other types of income which would force a filing requirement, but generally if you've got W-2 income within these ranges, you're not going to have to file anything. Some people obviously do $1 or more, 5,000 or more, blah, 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 because they want to get their refunds. But there are people that they just don't file, they don't want to file. So we have to change the data around a bit to get it looking like the Canadian data, because we can't create this data from the Canadian data. It's impossible. So we have to work backwards. So what are we doing? We have to combine the no filing requirement and under 18 and 18 plus with the under $30,000 of income, because, as I said before, they may not have a filing requirement, and so they probably have an income up to $30,000. They just didn't file. And then it's looking a little more like the Canadian data here. So I had to flip everything around here, which was time consuming. And then also you'll see that these are cumulative amounts down to $1 or more. This was taken out into each bracket, so we've got $1 to $5,000. This is how many people filed within that range, and you can see that I've broken it down even further, and then again breaking it down to look more like the Canadian data. You can see it here with the percentage of population and cumulative, but you can see already that the potential to earn much higher incomes based on these things on the right percentage of the population is much higher. So you can already see 200,000 plus, it would be 280,000 US dollars plus is already, in just this bracket alone, is 3.8%. And then when you add everything together, it's over 4%. So when we look at the US data broken down to very similar to the Canadian data, right? So 0 to 56,000 CAD, which is, I mean, in Canadian, in the Canadian returns, it was 0 to 50, but this is as close as you can get it based on how it's broken down here. So you've got a higher amount here, so 56,000 Canadian versus 50,000 Canadian, but less percentage of the population here, right? So 65% versus, what was it, 67.6% versus 65.5. We have a lot more people on lower incomes in Canada than there are in the US. And then it just becomes very striking the further you go up this chain. And you could even see from the graphical representation here, they've got a big bump with the 100,000 to 200,000 US dollars, which would be 140,000 to 280,000 CAD. They've just got a big bump there of people earning good amounts of money. But, you know, we go through this here and you see that you've got 56 to 105 CAD, which is very similar now, which is to what we had before, which was 50 to nearly just over 100, which is 40 to 75,000 US, which is 14% of the population. So when we're looking at this $140,000 over, you've got nearly 15% of the population, so 14.6% of the population earning 140,000 Canadian dollars plus. Whereas in Canada, this is drastically lower, like overwhelmingly lower. And then when we compare the two, you can really see the difference. So this is really a like for like here. And it's as close as we're going to get. So, you know, there are small couple of $1,000 differences here. So 56,000 versus 50,000. But you can already see in the percentage of the population, this amount is higher, right? So theoretically, in the US, this number should be a higher percentage of the population. But what it means is that there's people in Canada, there's more people in Canada earning lower incomes relative. So 65.5% of the population who earn just up to slightly more in Canadian dollars versus Canada, where it's 67.63. And then the next income bracket from 50 to 100, you know, you're looking at 23.5% of the population in Canada, 8 million people. And in the US, you're very similar income bracket here. You're looking at 14%. So what's happening is the wealth is moving up into the upper income brackets. I mean, the 100,000 to 155,000, which is very, very similar here, the 100 to 155 versus 105 to 140 here. That's roughly similar. So 5.7% versus 5.7% of the population. But you can see here that if you're earning over 140,000, which is 155 here, plus you're nearly 15% of the population versus just over, if we're going to do 140 again, like just around 5%. So you have a 3 times greater chance of earning higher amounts of money here than you do in Canada. And it's just strikingly different, because you can see here that the wealth is being distributed more amongst the higher income earners than it is here. In Canada, everyone's collectively earning more around these buckets than they are with these buckets. In the US, it's actually distributed more evenly amongst these 4 buckets than it is these 4 buckets. And also, as a percentage of population, this is actually lower than this. So that's something to think about. That really is something to think about for people. Your potential to earn much more money in the United States is very, very clear here. I mean, it is a bigger economy. And what you have to think about as well is when it comes to the taxes, you know, if you're earning money up here and you're a hard worker, you're doing very well in your job, or, you know, you own a company and your company is doing well, you've got a lot less tax you probably have more tax regulations, but you have a lot less tax to actually worry about as opposed to here in Canada. There's a lot more taxes here, which are, you know, it's filtering into paying for the healthcare costs. But what we're seeing when you run these comparisons is the healthcare costs are roughly similar. But again, like I said, if we go back to part 3, the variable versus fixed sort of idea, where say you are a family of 3 in both countries, your healthcare cost here is variable. So you're not earning $140,000, say you're earning $50,000. Your provincial taxes are obviously lower, so the amount of dollars that go from provincial taxes into healthcare is lower for you. Whereas here, say you want that equivalent healthcare, that gold plan, like I talked about before, you're still having to pay $12,000. You know, that is what it is. But your potential to earn much more money is a much higher probability in the United States than it is in Canada, unfortunately, via this analysis. But if you are in the 100 to 140,000 range, it's actually the same. It is the same. It's quite surprising when you break it down this way. But that, I have another one here. Pardon the terrible AI photos, but like I said, at higher income levels in the US, you would be paying substantially less tax than you would in Canada. But there are also other taxes that I haven't factored in here that you'd need to talk about. So the AMT taxes, which I'm not going to get into. But I did find something funny from what 50 Cent said a while ago. I don't want to be 20 cent. 62% taxes is a very, very bad idea. But, you know, mate, if you were in Canada, you wouldn't be 50 cent, you'd be 5 centavos. It's so different in terms of the taxes that you're going to pay at these upper tax brackets. You know, like on $1 million, I think it's $100,000 difference, something similar like that. But it's vastly, vastly different. And with the lower taxes, you've got obviously higher consumption that occurs at these brackets, which would then filter into, you know, expansion of companies and job opportunities, etc. You know, there is that to factor in as well, but it is what it is. So that's it from me, and we've covered all these parts. So if you haven't seen already, go back and check out the rest so you can actually see the different tax brackets, the taxes that you're actually going to pay on this 100,000 or 140,000, factoring in the cost of healthcare between the two countries, as well as housing and other expenses and the variability and optionality that occurs there. And then obviously you've just watched the high income probabilities, and you've seen that you've got a much higher probability to earn higher income in the US than you do relative to Canada. So that's it. I'm Jason from Fix My Books. If you would like to subscribe or like, share, comment, whatever, do whatever you want. I'm not going to stop you. And if you would like to have another comparison video where I go into detail comparing other places, let me know. Yeah, thanks.